Today we pick up where we left off with the WrestleMania 15 show as we review Backlash 1999. And the Podski starts now.
The Podski with John Baker. For over 1 year, the revolutionary force in audio entertainment.
Ooh, yeah!
Brother,
Let me talk to you! Freak out, freak out!
I just had an out-of-body experience!
The insane in the membrane!
Brother,
Yeah! And I'm here for only one reason, and that's to take it to the limit, yeah!
somebody stop the damn man!
I'm living on the edge.
Who is your daddy?
Hello and welcome to the Podski. I'm your host, Johnny Bake Show, and ringside with me is Teddy Mongoose, and we are back on the Backlash train as we reviewed Backlash 99 to this week. We did 2004 last week, so if you haven't listened or watched the WrestleMania 15 show from a few weeks back, we encourage you to go back and check that out. The links are in the description below, and that's exactly what we're picking up with today for Backlash 99. While you're here, make sure that you hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel grow, and based off the recent success here, it's all thanks to you guys. So that's why we're sticking with 99 and 2004 here for the show themes for the rest of the year. But Teddy, this show that we're doing today is on the heels of a very lackluster WrestleMania. WrestleMania 15 is so underwhelming, except for the end. The main event is magnificent, and we get the big rematch here at Backlash, and I'm really excited to go through it, but you, as our tribal goose, the table is again set for you. Would you please give us the backstage deets coming out of WrestleMania 15 and our notes for Backlash 1999?
All right, sir. Gloves are on, shovels in hand, and I'm not going to bury anybody, but I'm going to do some digging. All right, so here we go. The first thing that I want to pick up from, and we talked a lot about WrestleMania 15 business, is that starting from the April 12th, 1999 Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer has called WrestleMania 15 the biggest money pro wrestling pay-per-view show in history. And there's some really cool little business nuggets here. My first one is the early estimates are a 2.23 buy rate, which totals 830,000 buys. This would be approximately a $12.4 million company gross. At this time, he's saying the buy rate is basically the same as last year's show, although according to the Observer figures, it would be slightly smaller, but there are more homes that now have pay-per-view access. And I bring that up because very recent pay-per-view review, Backlash 04, right? Where you threw the box up on the screen. People are losing the box and they're gaining the dish.
Okay.
And because of that, we are seeing more houses. So do you know what a buy rate is?
No.
Okay. So the buy rate is the percentage of houses that buy the show that have pay-per-view access. That's what a buy rate is.
I would have assumed it would have been based off of just like the actual number itself, not a percentage.
Yes. So it is a percentage. And the reason that that's important is because WrestleMania 14 did and this is all preliminary numbers here, and spoiler alert, it changes. But based off of the first reporting a week after, WrestleMania 14 had a slightly larger buy rate. However, because more homes now have pay-per-view access in 1999 because of Dish Network. There were three carriers, and it was DirecTV, Dish Network, and I feel like there was something else. Regardless, that made buying pay-per-views way easier than going to the cable company, buying the box, et cetera, et cetera. And so now, because more homes have pay-per-view access, a smaller buy rate still equates to way more buys, which is where we are here.
Okay.
So we have last year, WrestleMania 14 did approximately 720,000 buys, which was thought to be the high water mark for wrestling pay-per-view at that time. but he does note that WrestleMania 14 was not as profitable because of the $3.5 million price tag for Mike Tyson.
It's still that they spent that much for Mike Tyson.
It really is. And you know what? Because of where they ended up, who can say they're wrong?
Right.
That's just it, is that it was almost, think about it, almost as big a gamble as WrestleMania 1, because the WWF was losing the war at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to pay a guy, $3.5 million and it doesn't work, that I don't know if that's a very good look. Dave says basically that through the 80s, the WWF would claim that every pay-per-view, WrestleMania especially, did 900,000 buys, and that wasn't right. Okay, it was made up number, just the same as a whole bunch of numbers that were made up there. But he does note that the show, being WrestleMania 15, is not as big as WrestleMania 3, which he calls the overall most successful WrestleMania of all time. That show did a buy rate that the WWF called 10.2%, but realistically was probably more like 8%. Nonetheless, that is 4 to 5 times higher than this show did for people with pay-per-view access.
That's true.
You have to remember, though, there are less people with pay-per-view, but we did talk about the Hogan power in the last episode, so there's a tie-in there. He noted that Lewis and Holyfield, which I bought that show myself, watch that fight live, did a 3.23 buy rate or 1.2 million buys. And the WrestleMania ends up doing just over a 2.3 and then between 850 and 875,000 buys. So WrestleMania 15 is a huge deal because Lewis and Holyfield was the biggest fight that you could put on at that time. It really was. But he does note that Hogan and Andre, WrestleMania 3, was about 500,000 buys, price tag $18.95, and pay-per-view was only in about 6 million homes. This year's show did 830,000 buys, but it was available to more than 37 million homes.
Wow, that's a crazy jump.
It is. Well, but that also explains the discrepancy in the percentage.
Yeah.
So there's always been wrestling fans, and when we had Hogan Andre, they all were willing to go and get the box. And later on, the reason that there's more buys but a lower buy rate is because now there's just more pay-per-view, more houses. WrestleMania 3, though, and this is what's crazy, also did 450,000 fans on closed circuit television. And if you add the buys, which was 500K, with closed circuit TV, 450K, with people in the arena, which was not 90,000, but well over 50, that show had 1 million people watching it. And that was actually the high watermark for people watching a pro wrestling show for a very long time.
It's crazy that WrestleMania 3, when you look at that, like there's over 1 million people watching that show, but we're talking about the Attitude Era where we're at in 99, where it's the height of all wrestling, and they're still well over 200,000 short of that number.
The one disclaimer is, and this is true, that Dave says that pay-per-view parties. So there is that.
Oh, yes. I forgot about, yeah. I
And
mean,
I'm not saying that pay-per-view parties didn't exist in 1987.
yeah.
But they were a much bigger thing in 1999. I watched WrestleMania 15 live at my friend's house, eating Fox's Pizza with 16 other friends because we were all in 8th grade.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So there is that. And so he does say that bot viewers are one thing, real viewers are another thing. The crazy thing here is, and again, we're at WrestleMania 15. Dave says the standout WrestleMania is number 10 because this show had Michaels and Ramon and Brett and Owen as two of the top tier matches.
Okay, yeah.
And so what's wild about this is that I was literally there from, I didn't watch them, but from Mania 1 until now.
Yeah.
And when I was able to watch WrestleManias and go and buy the VHSs and do all that, I loved WrestleMania 10. Obviously, the reason I loved WrestleMania 10 looking back is that it did have two stellar matches. But when we did the big WrestleMania rewatch I wish we were podcasting in 2020, right?
Yeah, that would have been so much fun.
It would have been. It would have been. But I do remember being underwhelmed by the show because aside from those two matches, it was a show.
Yeah, I remember watching that too and thinking that, yes, it was outside of the two matches. It was just, what are we doing?
But in real time,
But yes,
you had just said that 15 was a great main event and a horrible show.
yeah,
And Dave's still talking like this is a pretty good show.
I
Do you know
know.
what I'm saying? And so it is really wild to sort of think about that. So we get a breakdown of all the buy rates from all the WrestleManias. And here's my funnest nugget. Funnest, not a word, but I'm using it here. My funnest nugget that I have for you, John, is that WrestleMania 9, famed WrestleMania where I got the cable box from Comcast in Johnstown, saw my first live WrestleMania, did a 2.0 buy rate. That buy rate was the same buy rate or slightly larger than WrestleManias 12 and 13 combined.
Wow. And well, I guess that makes sense because 11 is, I don't think 11 is looked at very well, at least not to me. It
11
has,
was actually higher than 12.
wow.
Yeah.
Well,
11, 1.3, 12 was 1.2.
12, WrestleMania 12 is a weird one because of the Iron Man match. Because how do you do an hour long, and clearly people didn't want to buy it because they didn't want to watch that long of a match. That's crazy that 9 is looked at being such a bad WrestleMania, and it has its charm that I love about it. And I'm sure you have way more good things to say about it.
I have 9 in my top 10, and 9 is one of the 10 worst pay-per-views I've ever seen.
I know, and it's crazy that it outdid both of them.
Yep. 9 outdid 11 or 12 and 13.
Wow.
Which is absolutely crazy. So he lays those out, and then he gives his pick of the 10 greatest WrestleMania matches. And what do you think, John? We are in 1999. What is Dave Meltzer's favorite or greatest WrestleMania match of all time?
So in 1999, he loves WrestleMania 10 so much, so it's probably the ladder match.
Bada boom. Got that. So he has in order the ladder match, Hart and Austin from 13, which those are at that time, the only two 5-star matches in WWF history. Bret Hart versus Owen Hart at number 3, Steamboat Savage 4, Warrior Savage 5.
What?
Hart Mike. Oh, dude, Warrior Savage, John. The fact that you said what doesn't upset me because you're a Ute, but my God, man, that match is awesome. And the reason that match is awesome is because Randy Savage literally puts on a 20-minute epic with the Ultimate Warrior.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's crazy that Dave was willing to he probably only gave that because of Savage, but I know that he hates Ultimate Warrior to no end, which we all should.
I haven't watched Warrior Savage in 8 years, but I assumed it doesn't hold up very well either today. Although I do remember it as being an incredible one-man show by Savage on that day.
Okay.
There you go. Yep, there you go.
That's fair.
6 is Hart and Michaels from 12. 7, British Bulldogs versus Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake from WrestleMania 2.
I don't even remember that match, and I watched that WrestleMania.
No.
The show's a blur.
Nugget alert, potentially, with that one. 8 is Flair and Savage from 8. 9 is Hogan and Warrior from 6. And 10 is Austin and Rock from 15. And then he does say that if you went back and watched the Hogan and Warrior match, that it probably doesn't crack the top 10. But being there at that time and with what it had, it has to be. And that sort of really makes me, gives me thoughts of Hogan and Rock from 18.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good match. They
No,
don't do anything, but it's
first
great.
10 minutes, they don't do anything.
Yes, but it's great.
I know.
And so I think that modern day, if you're making a top 10, Hogan and Warrior might get bumped out. Hogan and Rock definitely gets put on there.
Oh, yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree.
So before we move on into our pre-Backlash showing, we are going to compare 1998 in March to 1999. So March 1998, average attendance, 10,363 people per show. In March 1999, 13,404 people per show.
Wow. Damn. 13, they're averaging 13,000 people a show. That's literally
Yeah.
sold out almost every single place they go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
That's
It is.
wild. The significant jumps that we named, even in the WrestleMania 15 show, that is crazy. They literally jumped 3,000 people. They literally jumped a civic center in a year.
Correct. And they were red hot in 98.
Yeah.
You know, like that was 14. That's Michaels, Tyson, Austin. Like that's what's really crazy about this.
Man.
The average gate in March 98 is $172,244. The average gate in March 1999, $297,000. It is up 72%.
Dude, they're making so much money.
They're printing money.
They're
Yeah.
literally printing it.
Percentage of sold out house shows in March of 98 is 50. Percentage of sold out house shows in March 1999 is 85.7.
My word.
Average Monday cable rating, March in 98 is 3.7. Average Monday cable rating in March 99 is 6.31.
All of these numbers are astronomical, but I just did 290,000 in 1999 in today's money, and it's over $500,000. On average, they're making $500,000 on ticket sales.
Yep.
Just in the building for a week-to-week show.
Yep. The major show in 98 was WrestleMania 14. 19,028 people sell out. There were 15,681 paid, $1.029 million gate, and a 2.30 buy rate estimated at 10.79 million. This year's WrestleMania, and these aren't final numbers because we're still in the next 2 weeks after Mania.
Yep.
18,274 people sell out, slightly smaller, but 16,756 paid, 1,000 more people paid, $1.438 million gate. So that is up almost 400,000 or over $400,000. Higher buy rate and $12.97 million as the gross for the show.
They are literally printing money in 90.
Yeah, dude. So there are some things. The bow is tied on WrestleMania 15.
Mm-hmm.
Are you ready to walk on the road to Backlash?
I absolutely am.
From the April 12th, 99 Observer newsletter, we have the 425 pay-per-view is looking like Austin versus Rock for the title with Shane McMahon as the ref, Undertaker versus Shamrock, Helmsley versus X-Pac, Holly versus Snow, and Paul White versus Mankind. They do need an angle on television to pull this one off. Apparently, there was a plan for Austin versus Mankind, and then later for Mankind versus White, but that was before White didn't get over as a heel, and they made the abrupt face turn because so much is invested in him, and he needs to get over so big that they're trying to basically sprinkle Austin dust onto him.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Because he really came off as a total goof. So that makes sense.
Absolutely. Mankind is hurt, very hurt. His knees, actually. He was going to take some time off to rest. However, that won't be the case. They gave him the European tour off, but he'll be back in the ring this weekend. There is a upcoming UPN special that is 2 hours long that is being rumored to be a women's show. Dave said that it is not the case because they do not have enough women to do all angles and matches, but stay tuned. We'll get into that later. Kerwin's selfies, which longtime WWF viewers would have seen Kerwin Selfie's name comes on as the director at the end. He had a heart attack at this point in time. And now, here we go. Sean Stasiak should be starting in the next 6 weeks as the love slave for PMS.
The what?
The love slave for PMS. Do you remember him?
I remember Sean Stasiak.
Do you remember him as Meat?
No, I only remember him in WCW, and then I remember him and I think he was in SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. I could be.
Well, he came into the WWF as Meat, which was a built man that was basically there to satiate the women of PMS.
Okay. All right.
And once he was cleared from his hair transplant, he was good to start in that role.
Okay.
Matt Bloom, who has worked as Baldo, should be starting in at about the same time as Stasiak. Matt Bloom, if you do not know, was the current head trainer at the Performance Center. He was originally slated to come in. As George Steele Jr.
He's hairy enough. That's A-Train for other people that don't know too.
And the reason that I noted that is there's also talk of not saddling him with that gimmick. And I wrote, instead, they named him after a penis piercing.
Yep.
Which they did.
Yep.
And again, he's currently the head trainer at the Performance Center. So he was breaking in at this time, and he's still there now. One of the headbangers, I believe, is Thrasher, will be doing the Beaver Cleavage, but we don't know who will play his mother, Mrs. Cleavage. They will be doing an evil clown a la Doink, and Bruce Pritchard may wind up managing him, but it won't be in the Brother Love character, and that would be for the other headbanger. So my question to you, was there ever an evil clown other headbanger with or without Bruce Pritchard? Because I did not remember this.
I don't remember this at all.
Okay, so that might not have made the cutting floor. Yeah. Beaver Cleavage definitely did. Those were weird little vignettes, and he came to the ring with like a paper hat with a twirly thing on the top, and his mom had huge knockers, and they insinuated that he was sleeping with it was something else, man. It really was.
You had to be there, I guess.
You had to be there. Also, Bart Gunn suffered a concussion from the knockout punch from Butterbean.
I wonder why.
Correct. And then Dave says, and I thought this was a cute little synopsis here, the whole Brawl for All turned out to be a major flop. Savio Vega suffered a neck injury that he still hasn't recovered from. Steve Williams was brought in with the idea of being a top contender for the title. It was injured and out for months. His stock dropped to the point that he's involved in a feud with prelim guys like Bob Hawley and Al Snow. Bart Gunn came out as the star, was never pushed, sent to Japan, and when he finally came back, his tough guy reputation was destroyed in seconds by a guy who's only a gimmick boxer. He does then note that the WWF had to think that he would have beat Butterbean because he was considered a joke in boxing circles, and they never mentioned that on TV since.
Why would they?
Right.
And later, 22 years later, they make documentaries about it.
Yep.
That it was.
Steven Regal is let go. He'd been in drug rehab the last few months, was only 3 weeks from completion, and was allowed to go home for a weekend and then didn't make it back. I said he will eventually return to win the Intercontinental title, drink piss on television, and manage a kayfabe nephew with a kayfabe intellectual disability. Yep, so there is his life. Shawn Michaels promo on plug archives. Go back and watch that. Shawn Michaels promo at WrestleMania was not what it was supposed to be. Not sure how it was supposed to be different, but there's heat about it, and that would partially explain why he wasn't on TV the next 2 nights. Michaels also was married on April 1st in Las Vegas to Whisper of the Nitro Girls. The two had only known each other for a few weeks. He recently just had an engagement broken off. There was a Forbes magazine story about wrestlers having no leverage when it comes to their paycheck. It notes that pro wrestlers make about 15% of the revenue of their business generation, or the total revenue their business generates. And you compare that to 48% for NBA players. Ken Patera said that at his peak, which Ken Patera, if you do not know, was a big star in the late 70s and early 80s, or through the late 80s, actually, but his peak would have been late 70s through the mid 80s. He is an LJN. He earned $140,000 in his top year, but after expenses, netted $42,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I wrote literally the same thing 25 years later in terms of wrestlers getting a piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because even though they're being paid better than ever with guaranteed contracts, their actual share of the revenue is absolutely less than 30% or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, that's the nature of the business, I guess. We're looking here at some changes. Shane McMahon is no longer the commentator on Heat. And I had, it's all coming back to me. Shane O'Mac started being one of the announcers on Heat, and they replaced him with Kevin Kelly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so that was when Heat was doing buku numbers.
Yeah.
So they replaced him as a follow-up to our Outside the Lines deal, which go back in the archives and check that out.
WrestleMania 15 show.
Yes, sir. Raw now has a parental warning. Graphic warning about material in the show being unsuitable for children. The funny thing is that lasted 1 week. So that was
Of course it did. Of course.
right. Yep, that was taken over. That was taken off after 1 week. The plan was to hold off Austin and Rock until SummerSlam, but they went with the WrestleMania rematch on the next pay-per-view because they have recognized they can't keep The Rock as a heel for much longer. So they'll probably be shooting an angle in the next month or two for that turn. Also, there is a new set coming for Raw as Austin and Paul White destroyed the Titantron at the end of that show. Did you happen to see that one?
I did see that one. That was pretty crazy. The way the Big Show was pulling down the Titantron, and then all of a sudden Austin like box cutters it, but then he has like a massive like pole saw that he just like slices right down through it. It was pretty cool.
And I completely forgot that happened until I read this. And then I remembered where it was, we have the Austin is going to cost Vince money. So I'm going to tear this thing down.
Yes.
And that was how they got their new Raw set. And, you know, one of those deals where I read it and I could without going back and watching it, I could see everything happening. That was a pretty cool little spot there. Moving on, we now are looking at the next week changes to the show. I have got Mankind and Paul White will now be a boiler room match, which means it'll probably be pre-taped. Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett will face the New Age Outlaws. He does note that even though it can be edited ahead of time, the idea of White in a boiler room match doesn't sound thrilling, even though Mankind could put on a one-man show. Rock and Mankind, where you knew every brutal spot was going to be the Mankind taking it, not The Rock, because The Rock wasn't going to do anything crazy.
No, right. He couldn't at the time after that surgery either.
And you are correct about that. Getting into Raw, do you have any Raw notes from and I'm just going to call this the River show?
I don't have any specific notes, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay. So I wanted to make sure that I highlighted this one because when we were doing that Mania 15 show, I felt like every bullet point I was reading as I went through was like, this is on the highlight reel for 20 years. People remember this forever, blah, 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 blah. And here we are again. So this is the show where The Rock throws the Skull title belt into the water. And Dave says that it was dumb enough when WCW did it with the Giant in the same body of water years ago. And I didn't look for further context, but if that's the same body of water that WCW did it in, that's crazy. if it is the same river or whatever that might be.
I think that I think Conrad and Bruce had talked about this, that they threw one of the times they threw the belt down there, they couldn't find it when it came back. But he not only threw that belt, he threw Austin over as well.
Well, and he notes that it was a stunt man first. But I hate to say this, but I didn't remember him throwing Austin. I remembered him throwing the belt.
Yes, he threw Austin off. Well, he kind of hit Austin off. Austin was like holding on to the ledge, and he gives him a punch, and then he falls off. But then he launches that title belt off.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that spot of him yeeting that.
And it was kind of interesting because 2 years earlier, Austin did the same thing to The Rock, which eerily looked like the very same river from 2 years earlier too, but he did it with the IC belt. It did nice callbacks here.
Yep. Other notes from this show: Deborah is the worst actress in wrestling because she was supposed to be frightened to death and couldn't stop laughing. Ken Shamrock's sister is being held hostage by the Ministry. The Godfather won the Intercontinental title from Goldust with the world's sloppiest Death Valley driver in 3 minutes and 55 seconds. It was supposed to be Goldust versus the Boss Man, but the Godfather offered him to some hoes, and so he took a hike. So the Boss Man wanted 5 of them. Godfather made the deal. It was pretty bad. And I guess Boss Man's night ended early, or in less than 3 minutes and 55 seconds, because the hoes then celebrated after the match with the Godfather.
Also pretty crazy that the Boss Man was able to come back and do this after being hung in the ring from that Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania.
Maybe that's why the time with the hose didn't matter.
World, brother.
Well, maybe that's why the time with the hose was short.
Maybe
the blood couldn't travel where it needed to.
That might be the case.
Mankind saved Ken Shamrock from crucifixion or a pagan ritual. X-Pac and Kane beat Triple H and Test in 6 minutes and 25 seconds when Triple H in China walked out on Test and Kane gave him a tombstone. At least X-Pac is great. Kane and Triple H, when they work together, wrestle like they're in a swimming pool, or at least running in slow motion like the kid in that Starburst commercial. Don't even get me started on Test. That's what he says.
Is Test still dead?
Yes. Check the Twitter account. Moving on to other news and notes. Jesse Ventura is interviewed by the Winnipeg Free Press because of all the heat with Canadians, the teachers, and wrestling. He says that he doesn't watch wrestling anymore, but it's always been stereotypes and has never been wholesome. Quote, every Japanese wrestler was a sneaky little guy who threw salt, and every German wrestler was a Nazi. If you don't want children to see it, that's called parenting, end quote. He then claims he's outgrown wrestling and has been banished by the WWF after beating them in a lawsuit, and then was banished by the WCW after he didn't get along with Hulk Hogan, and then felt slighted whenever they didn't acknowledge him on camera. And I noted that he is banished from the WWF until August of that year, when he's the referee for SummerSlam 1999.
Wait, this doesn't make any sense because Ventura was literally on WrestleMania 15 with Donald Trump. Literally
John, all I can do is just read what Jesse says.
He was literally on WrestleMania. He was in the Hall of Fame class.
Sometimes you have short memories about things. You know, they say people don't forget. Well, Jesse does. Ask the questions. That's the thing. Ask the right questions. Actually, I guess why was he there when he was just at Mania 15 is the right question.
Yeah.
All right. So last little stretch here before we get into Backlash. Fast forwarding, for reasons that nobody has explained, given the company should be in its strongest financial condition in history, we just went through it, man, and that was why we prefaced it first. They are printing money at the gate, merchandising never stronger, etc. The WWF did a big spring cleaning of sorts, so we have let go of Public Enemy, Gilbert, Dwayne Gill, the Blue Meanie, George Steele, Golga, which was John Tenta or Earthquake, Steve Williams, the DOA, which was Ron and Don Harris, Bart Gunn, the Legion of Doom, and Luke Poirier, which was Sniper of the Truth Commission, and Fatu.
Oh, I like over Rikishi.
Yeah, so on that round of cuts right before Backlash, those were the casualties. However, Dave does note most of these names are currently still on the payroll and on the active roster, so the term fired is pretty premature. He then says some of them just have contracts that won't be renewed. He notes that Public Enemy was a failure from day one. They're already in negotiations to return to WCW, which they do. The Gilbert character, while funny the first time and probably the only time, had a very short shelf life and had outlived it already. Meanie was hilarious at times in ECW as a Chris Farley type character, which is funny because me and my friends love the Blue Meanie in ECW. And then when he came to WWF, like, I thought Blue Dust was funny, but like, it's just interesting to see that in writing because I remember sort of that shine being off the, the car there, the stink being off the rose. There was, however, an internet campaign to get him his job back. And on 4/20, he was called by the WWF and was told that they were going to keep him. So he made the cuts, and this was Drake Maverick before Drake Maverick, I guess. There's no place for Golga and George Steele because the oddities are gone. Luna was officially fired as well, although unofficially was let go several weeks ago. The DOA hasn't been pushed in months. So the DOA hadn't been pushed in months. Rather than doing some connection to allude to a gay influence with Big Giant Bikers and Pretty Little Boys, which was Scotty 2 Hottie and Brian Christopher, that never really got off the ground. And Dave says probably because some of the participants probably weren't happy with where it would have head if it kept going. I'm assuming that the alleged shoot Nazis of the story were the ones that would have had a problem with that. I don't know, but I'm just saying.
Yeah.
He also notes that the WWF never attempted to market someone as a shooter gimmick. He called Bart Gunn colorless, notes the same thing that we had said before about him losing his momentum after the Brawl for All. He even then criticizes their use of Ken Shamrock because he said that Shamrock got over immediately because he was a shooter, but Bill Goldberg, even though he wasn't, took it to the next level. And that's how you use a shooter gimmick. This dude that comes out dressed plain and is just basically here to rough you up. And he says that they sort of dropped the ball there. LOD is no surprise. And here's the crazy thing, dude. LOD is no surprise. They are 39 and 41 years old.
How were they not 50 at that point?
I know. They are put out to pasture, and they are 39 and 50 years old. And he says the biggest shock was Steve Williams, who's never given a chance. Steve Williams was only 38. He was set to battle Steve Austin for the namesake. He was going to be marketed without a gimmick other than his toughness. Brawl for All was put into place as a shoot, largely as a way to get him over as a legitimate tough guy and a threat for Austin. However, he notes that Steve Williams was the only pro wrestler in history to ever be a 4-time NCAA tournament place winner, but he had never boxed. And the Brawl for All had a lot of boxing.
Yep.
And so he was out of his comfort zone. Yep, out of his element. Destroyed his hamstring in the second round against Bart Gunn. Knocked out in the third. Was brought back as a Japanese wrestler, which I don't even remember. And then whenever JR sort of went rogue and crazy, he was going, and I actually sort of remembered this, that JR was managing him as this rogue crazy guy, but then they put JR in the booth, and so there was no place for Steve Williams. And Vince McMahon said he had no future with the company. He was done.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so, oh my, Jim Cornette is reported. There have been a lot of reports of Jim Cornette being fired. It is no secret he's in the doghouse with Kevin Dunn and Vince Russo, as he was often arguing about their philosophy of wrestling, since Cornette has a different opinion of what wrestling should be, and their current success flies in his face at times. While doing voiceover for syndication and then being taken off of Sunday Night Heat, the office didn't like Cornette using words like wrestling, wrestlers, and wrestling match to describe aspects of the product, and hated Cornette referring to wrestling history and names from the past in his commentary. Jim Cornette is 37 years old at the time and has pitched to the office, which they think is a good idea, but we'll see where it goes, of him being in charge of basically a, quote, minor league farm system set up for the WWF, end quote. In July or August, Cornette will probably move to Louisville and basically work on developing new talent for the WWF. It will be some degree of NWA Ohio Valley Championship Wrestling every Tuesday night at the Louisville Gardens.
That's a great nugget that they basically were born. OVW was born in 99, right after WrestleMania.
Right after WrestleMania, because they couldn't handle Jim Cornette being an announcer talking about wrestling.
Wow.
And all he did was give them Batista, Randy Orton, John Cena, Brock Lesnar,
Shelton Benjamin.
Yeah.
The list goes on. OVW.
The list goes on and on and on. So my last nugget before we get into the show is there is no lineup advertised for a UPN special on April 29th that is going to be patterned and paced like a 2-hour Raw episode. UPN hasn't agreed to do a weekly series, but it's a pretty good bet that they will. UPN will only do the show if they can edit it afterwards, so they can edit out anything gratuitous, as if wrestling isn't all gratuitous this day, says Dave. But the best bet is at least a 1-hour show on Wednesday nights, although it still could be Tuesday or Thursday. And the first show is called SmackDown.
I was getting, as soon as you were reading that, I was like, is that SmackDown? Great. That's a great lead in here, because we are going to cover the very first episode of SmackDown, which comes later in 1999. I believe it is in August, the end of August. So I already got that one on the docket. So spoiler alert, we're going to be doing the very first episode of SmackDown review here on the Podski later this year, which brings us right into Backlash. This is on, like we said, this is on the heels of a very poor WrestleMania with a great ending, and we're going to get the rematch here. So what are the numbers before I give the Backlash report?
Backlash 1999 took place on April 25th, came to you from the Providence Civic Center in Providence, Rhode Island. This show, according to Observer subscribers in the initial poll, received a 60% thumbs up, 20.9% thumbs down, 19.9% thumbs in the middle. The two matches receiving best match votes, overwhelmingly number one was Steve Austin versus The Rock. Second was actually Mankind versus Big Show. Mm-hmm. And then worst match was Godfather and Goldust. Others receiving votes, The Brood versus the Acolytes of Midian, and Ken Shamrock versus The Undertaker. So Dave says the show got a mixed response, but a lot more on the positive side. It appeared to be a step above the WWF pay-per-view so far this year. Storylines were kept simple, with most of the focus being on the antics of Vince and Shane McMahon, and The Undertaker as the lead characters in the soap opera, with The Rock and Austin coming down as the major supporting players, despite being in the main event, and the angle of The Undertaker kidnapping Stephanie McMahon, spoiler alert, was designed to build to the next night's ratings.
So for me personally, I like that you added the thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle. I am giving this one a big fat thumbs in the middle. Mm-hmm. I was not going to give it a thumbs down, but if it wouldn't be for the ending, it's going to get a thumbs down. But the ending brought me up to a thumbs in the middle. I can't give it a thumbs up. But putting myself back, reading this stuff, I did not remember that Stone Cold and The Rock had a rematch. Do you know what I did remember? Where to, Stephanie, or whatever that line was at the very end. You got it.
So, that's, to me, that stuck with me for 25 years.
Yes.
I can see it happening. I also should say, before we start to get into the matches, that he said that Steve Austin and The Rock bettered their WrestleMania performance. The wrestling pay-per-view match of the year so far in 1999 and that show drew 10,939 people, sold out building, $293,873 for the gate, and another $83,283 in merchandise. So a commercial success, and Dave lauds the performance in the main event. So all that being said, what you got, bro?
Yes, they open the show with JR and King on commentary, and JR lets us know right away that Shane announced on Sunday Night Heat that the main event between Stone Cold and The Rock is a no disqualification match, but if Stone Cold touches the special guest referee, which is Shane McMahon, he is disqualified. So in a no disqualification match, there is indeed a disqualification.
Why not?
Yep. We kick off the show with a 6-man tag team action with The Brood, who, if you remember from the WrestleMania 15 show, they rappelled from the ceiling to help Undertaker hang Boss Man from the Hell in a Cell. Now they're facing the Ministry, which is Mideon and the Acolytes. This happened because Christian had given up where Undertaker was holding Stephanie hostage on the March 29th Raw. So the Undertaker was going to sacrifice Christian, and whenever they were going to tie him up, Edge and Gangrel stepped in to stop it before beating up the Ministry. This match got very boring very quickly until the finish. So I don't want to speculate here, but it looks like Bradshaw didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to be in there at all. The only thing that he did was give a hellacious powerbomb to Edge and nearly decapitate Christian for the finish, but he didn't sell worth hell, and he was basically rendered useless except for those 2 spots. But we did get a Big Vis sighting, and Big Vis runs in as a member of the Ministry, throws Christian back in the ring, and whenever Christian gets up is whenever Bradshaw hits him with that clothesline from hell.
Farouk and Bradshaw and Mideon beat Gangrel and Edge and Christian in 11:38. It had no heat. Bradshaw didn't want to sell. Viscera ran into Christian and threw him into the ring, where Bradshaw pinned him after a scary clothesline.
Yeah.
1 1/4 star. John, you nailed it.
It was brutal to get through.
You nailed it. 11:38, dude.
Yeah.
Oh,
much for a curtain match. Yes.
11:38 with uninterested Bradshaw. Dude, interested
Wait
Bradshaw sucks.
Just wait until later in the show.
Okay.
We got The Rock entering the building, and he is dragging the smoking skull belt on the ground, just pure disrespectful. I thought it was pretty cool because you could hear the belt dragging on the tile as he's walking through the concourse. But our next match is a hardcore championship match with Hardcore Holly as your champion versus Al Snow. Both of these men were in the triple threat match from WrestleMania. Surprise here, again, they get a lot of time. Al busted himself open right at the beginning of the match whenever Holly hits him with the belt. There was a really cool spot with Al Snow hitting a leaping moonsault, but he almost took himself out with the ring post because he was way too close. His legs almost swung back into the ring post before he even hit Holly. They fought back to where Bob Holly at one point used a kitchen sink in the backstage area on Al Snow. Snow got thrown into a dumpster where Bob Holly continued to beat Al Snow. They did a count in the dumpster, so Mike Chioda had to slap trash bags to make a count.
Slapping trash bags.
Yeah.
Podskishirts.com.
Snow eventually gets the upper hand as he throws Holly out of the TV truck and onto the roof of a car. They managed to make it back to the ring here after they were out in the parking lot. Throws Snow through a table with a superplex off the top rope, but it's Al Snow who gets the win here after hitting Holly in the head with head.
Al Snow won the hardcore title from Bob Holly in 15:27.
15 minutes.
15:27.
Came back.
The notes that I have: Holly used a jug of water. Snow used a moonsault off the barricade. So it's funny that you said that, and hit Holly in the chest with the water jug. Finish, Holly got his arm on Snow, and finally, after a superplex, but Snow kicked out. Snow then grabbed head and used it used it for a headshot to the chest. It's weird to say, for the pin. 2.25 stars.
Al got a really big reception with Head. Head was over.
Look, man, he was, and I can't fault him for that. It didn't have big staying power, but he was a bigger deal in that company than a lot of the ECW guys were whenever they first came over.
Yes. Undertaker and the Ministry are backstage, and they're saying that they have to prepare for the arrival of the higher power. So we get the higher power tease here. The next match is an Intercontinental Championship match with the Godfather versus Goldust. This was a very quick match. Godfather retained. Goldust tried to use powder to throw into Godfather's face, but Godfather smacked it up into Goldust's face, and a blinded Goldust blindly wrestled Blue Meanie, and thinking that it was Godfather. This was, I want to say it was a 5-minute match. It was so quick. They spent more time on the introductions and the post-match stuff with the hose than they did with the actual match itself.
Dude, you got it right now. Godfather retained the IC title, beating Goldust in 5:21. Blue Meanie was back with Goldust, now calling him Mommy. Fast forward to the finish. Goldust couldn't see, so he beat up Meanie, who he thought was the Godfather, including using Shattered Dreams on him. Meanie then fell down on Goldust with a low blow headbutt. Godfather then used his patented worst Death Valley driver and wrestling finisher, quarter star. 1/4 star.
Wow. The next match is a New Age Outlaws versus Jeff Jarrett and Owen Hart. This match was to determine the number one contender for the World Tag Team Championships. Immediately, right away, you can tell they're trying their damnedest to get Jeff Jarrett over, because they had Deborah out there in nearly her bathing suit. It basically was a bathing suit. And the crowd reacted to her more than they did for the match. Owen and Jarrett, I personally felt like they did some actual good tag team moves. They really paired well with each other, but everyone hates Jeff Jarrett, including you, Teddy.
Including me, man.
Owen had Road Dogg in a sleeper hold. Sleeper holds are too much here in the show. We're going to get into sleeper holds a little bit longer. Things picked up a little bit as Road Dogg gave Owen a pump handle slam for a 2 count that saved Jarrett. Owen and Jarrett tried to do a double sharpshooter to both of the Outlaws at the same time, but Billy countered, kicks Jarrett out of the ring. Billy hits Owen with the Famouser for the win, and the New Age Outlaws are your new number one contenders.
This was interesting.
Yeah.
So the thing that I have noted here is that the winner of this match challenges Kane and X-Pac for the tag titles at the, quote, UPN special that airs on 4/29. Here's what I don't know, and maybe you do, but that is the show where Shawn and The Rock have their deal, and then The Rock decides, I'm never working with you, Shawn Michaels, right?
I believe so. And that was like the pre-SmackDown before SmackDown.
Yeah, but that could have been that would have been it. I'm thinking
where that happens, yes.
Yeah. Because Michaels kicked him stiff, and The Rock said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "If you can't take it, get out of the business, pal."
Yes. I'm pretty sure that
might not have been the best thing to say to that guy at that time. You know what? They both still work there, though. Anyway, back to the match here. I do have noted that Deborah came out in a black bikini, and most of the match was teased that she was going to take the top off. Solid match. Ended when Billy pinned Hart after the Famouser. Billy pulled down his trunks.
Yeah.
Giving everyone the panty shot, which probably isn't the panty shot the majority of the audience was looking for. 2.25 stars.
Michael Cole is backstage with Shane McMahon, and he asks how Shane can be an impartial referee with the newly added stipulations to this main event. Shane says that he's not Vince McMahon, and he doesn't make guarantees, but he says that he has his word, and Shane reiterates that he's not his father. He's just Vince, and to stay out of his way, and he basically promised on his grandfather's grave.
I bet you he plays that all the time now to his own kids.
I bet you he does. The camera jumps to Kevin Kelly then with Vince. Vince says that he's taking care of his family, and that's way more important. He says that Shane doesn't believe everything that he's saying. And Steph then steps in and says that Shane knows exactly what he's doing. And Vince hopes that Shane doesn't make a bigger mistake than he already has after tonight. The Boiler Room Brawl match between Big Show and Mankind. This is Mankind's signature match. Foley is just so good at working these matches and using these surroundings and making it all make sense. Foley's able to turn the tables early with an eye poke, and Big Show tried to punch Foley, but he hits the refrigerator instead, and he hit the hell out of that refrigerator. Foley is then able to hit Big Show repeatedly with sheetrock, which I thought was really interesting. Big Show put Foley in a shopping cart and pushed him into some tables. It looked like it legitimately hurt. I legit popped to the moon, though, when they shot outside of the Boiler Room, and it's just Teddy Long standing there, just just waiting.
Earning that paycheck, baby. Nothing easy. Nothing easier than officiating that one. Free money. That's free money, Teddy. That'd be one of my side gimmicks.
Amen. Foley breaks a window over Big Show's head. He climbed a ladder, but then Big Show chokeslams Foley off the top of the ladder onto tables with glass in them. The beatdown of Foley continued until Foley hit a pipe where steam shot out and hit Big Show's face. Mankind gets the win, but then he's immediately attacked by Boss Man and Test as he leaves the Boiler Room. But Big Show and Foley eventually fight them both off.
The note that I had here was the broken glass.
Yeah.
And with that, there was a 2020 special following up the Outside the Lines deal. And they did a special on Backyard Wrestling. And there were these, jabron kids that were using glass and stuff in these backyard matches and cutting themselves. And Dave says, I guess after seeing 2020, the WWF realized that they weren't as cutting edge as far as giving kids the ultimate in stupid things to learn to copy. So now kids who want to be Mick Foley can break glass windows over each other to try to become cool to their friends. Match ends. Dave gives it 3 1/4.
Yeah, it wasn't as good as what the Empty Arena match was or the previous Boiler Room Brawls, but it was still, Mankind knew what he was doing. He made it.
Brother, that's a not pre-taped match. Dave even says it doesn't appear to be pre-taped with Paul White. And 7 minutes, 40 seconds, anything over 3 stars, a total win, in my opinion.
Michael Cole is backstage with Triple H in China. Triple H says that he made X-Pac and he's going to break him tonight. China also did a promo as well. Their match is next. This is what we could definitely see as the very beginnings of Triple H making his ascend onto the roster from the mid-card, but the entrance sucked. That entrance music, I don't know what that entrance music was. It was bad.
It wasn't my time?
It was not my time, not yet. My time comes later. It was like a mix between the corporation and something else. I don't know what it was, but it was bad.
I have to check that out. I thought it went right to I thought once it was him in China, that it was right to my time.
No,
my time's great.
My time's great, but that's later in the year. This match it had its moments, but I wish it should have been about 10 minutes max. There was way too many rest holds in the middle. The Pac hits the X Factor after the ref was a no count. China low blows Pac, and then the lights went out. That is when Pac's tag team partner Kane came in to save X-Pac as he chokeslammed Hunter and China. Both are put in the corners, and X-Pac gets a Bronco Buster on both, but as he gets up from Bronco busting China, he turned right into a pedigree, and Triple H got the win. And again, this match, there's a lot of stuff that kind of happened earlier in the match that was a little more high-paced, but they do so many rest holds here.
Yeah, Dave says that and throughout this month lead up, more than one observer, he noted that Waltman is the best worker in the company. So he has high opinions of Waltman. This is a 19-minute long match. Here's the problem that I think anyways. In 1999, with this company in this style, I think that's why 1919 didn't work. So 19 minutes, 19 seconds is probably, just as you said, 9 minutes too long, because when everything's 5 minutes, when you go 20, it feels like forever. And
It does.
unless you're working the entire time, it's going to be a tough one to get over. He does note, he being Dave, Triple H didn't do a lot. People's opinions were this match fell below expectations. He did say that JR did an excellent job on commentary of selling the neck injury to
Yes.
Waltman. And then for the finish, you already went through that, 2 3/4 star.
Yes, and it's funny that we mentioned that the rest holds in too long of matches, because that is exactly what the semi-main event between Undertaker and Shamrock is.
Dude, I saw this time and I was offended.
Yes.
I wasn't surprised, I was offended.
I know. Wait till we get the rundown here.
Give it to me.
Shamrock was the match was made because Shamrock was tasked by Vince to find Steph whenever Undertaker kidnapped her. Undertaker had tied Shamrock's sister up on the Taker symbol because he couldn't get Steph. Undertaker basically takes control of the match early with power moves. The crowd is dead throughout this entire match. And it's a wonder because they do all these rest holds. They were just ready for the main event just as much as I was. Shamrock countered Undertaker's big moves with submissions. They're all impressive, but they did it too many times. They went back to the well way too many times. Shamrock did try to do his own tombstone. It was immediately countered into the real tombstone. Undertaker gets the win, and yet, like what I said, another way too long of a match. It could have been about 5 minutes shorter or about 3 rest holds less. The Undertaker did a single leg crab in this match.
Okay, so this is what's really interesting here. So again, the length of this match I thought was insane, but the crowd was dead. This was actually a great match had it been held in another place. The story was that Shamrock continually made smooth moves into submissions on the leg to keep the Undertaker on the ground, but the problems were twofold. One, WWF fans don't know the submissions and don't pop for moves that haven't been sold on television. 2, Shamrock's cool knee bars and ankle cranks and arm bars out of the UFC haven't been pushed in Shamrock matches, so fans were chanting boring loudly. And the other thing is, nobody at any point believed The Undertaker would ever submit, since no top guys do. Here's what's great about this. This match would have played great in Japan.
Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, probably would have, because
but it's so funny, dude, because I love Japanese wrestling, and here's the trope. Like here is the trope.
That is
fun. Here's what's really funny about that though, is that Bruce, etc., always uses the Japan thing as, oh, Dave gave it 3 stars, but it's 5 in the Tokyo Dome. Dave gives this a 1 3/4, but says this match would have been great in Japan with the same workers.
Yeah.
And the reason why is that this 5-minute long, like fun dip, sugar eating cotton candy audience isn't here for psychology on submissions and whatnot. He literally said in the US, WWF fans acted like this was a lengthy series of rest holds, which this isn't your fault, John, because you are not a UFC submissions guy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's, you actually tick the boxes there to be like, hey, I'm watching this show and there's all these things happening. And now here's this guy just trying to grab a leg. This is boring.
Right. They did it. It was okay when they did it the first 1 or 2 times, but they just kept continuing to do it over.
And 20 minutes, man. Again, we just said 20 minutes for that. Right. In a show that is full of 5 and 7 minute matches. Yeah, it is overkill.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, and he says 1 3/4. So it's not like he says it's great, but he does note that had the setting been different, probably would have gotten over more.
The main event is Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin for the WWF Championship, no disqualification match. Shane, as a special guest referee, made sure that someone could take the Smoking Skull belt back to the back for the duration of the match. Austin and Rock get enormous reactions in their entrances. Austin comes down, but he starts running and he yeeted that belt nearly across the ring. And this match what I have written here is that this match is basically a carbon copy of the WrestleMania match. They fought up to the stage. They tear down the stage set this time. They made their way back to the ring. And when they made their way back, Shane kept trying to pull Austin away off of Austin's attacks in the corner. They again fight to the outside where Rock gives Austin a rock bottom on the Spanish announce table. The thing about the rock bottoms is that they look amazing, but they look even better when you're putting somebody through a table. Austin tried a stunner, but he's pushed into Shane, and it turns back around where he's rock bottom. Shane laid Rock's arm over Austin, but then Austin was able to kick out of that. Shane tried to hit Austin with the belt, but he hit Rock instead, and Austin makes the cover, but it's the big moment of the match where Shane goes to make the 3 count, but he stops his arm and he flips off Austin, gets out of the ring, and basically quits. So Vince then shows up with the Smoking Skull belt. Earl Hebner replaces Shane as the referee. The Rock tried to hit Austin with the belt, but countered by Rock getting hit by Austin with his own belt shot to the head. 1, 2, 3. Austin retains as champion. He gets his belt back, but the show is not quite over yet.
So, my notes before you get into the end of the show. Dave says, and this is I have some neat notes here. 1, 17 minutes, 7 seconds to retain the WWF title. Insane that the 2 biggest stars in the company with the biggest match you could put on with a WrestleMania rematch is shorter than the previous 2.
Especially a damn Undertaker match, man.
Yeah. Taker and Shamrock got a minute and a half longer than this one, and the Waltman and Triple H match got 2 minutes longer than that.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
Those last matches were so dragging along. I was so happy to get to this main event.
Well, and he notes that apparently the people were too. He said people exploded. He said the storyline stuff was all really well done. The idea of Vince being going from Ultimate Heel to Ultimate Father is kind of hard to take with no transition period, but nonetheless, good storytelling. This was probably the match WrestleMania should have been, as these 2 killed themselves, taking hard bumps outside the ring. The next sentence is, The Rock's gyno is starting to return.
Wow. Already on about that. I can second what Dave said. I think that this one was better just because of the stakes. Like, Shane was a better ref than Vince was.
Yeah, and the thing about this is that not only did you have the bumps, and I don't want to say that sometimes the sequel is better than the first one, and it doesn't happen very often.
No.
But if you look back at recent history, like your Omega and Okada, your Omega and Ospreay, or even your Rhodes and Reigns, the reason the second match is important and where it can be better, and in all 3 of those cases probably is because even if they weren't rated as high, like if you just objectively look, is because in the second match, there are now counters to the counter.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So and when wrestlers do that, it's next level stuff. And I think that that's what makes those things really, really great. And here we saw the main event, and what you had was almost more like aggression, vitriol, anger, tougher bumps, bigger spots,
yes.
Because what worked last time won't work this time. And that's really cool embedded storytelling.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. The show was not over, though, after Austin won the belt. As soon as Austin grabs the Smoking Skull belt, the camera cuts to a limo that Stephanie is sitting in as the ministry approaches. The cops tell the driver to go. Stephanie yells up to the driver to wait for her father. The window lowers, and it's Undertaker as the driver with the "Where to, Stephanie?" Stephanie piercingly yells "Dad" as they shoot back into the arena where Vince is disgustingly looking at Austin, but has no idea what is happening to Stephanie. And that's how the show goes off the air.
Shame how the storyline ends, man.
I know, right?
Shades of Adam Cole as the devil.
Yep. So bad.
Because and the thing is Vince is the higher power and Adam Cole is the devil. It's not bad, except you hope it's somebody else, right?
Correct.
And that's the problem. Sometimes when the payoff is that easy, it's great.
Right.
But when you have these kinds of cliffhangers where obviously they did not have a higher power in mind, like it's very, very evident, just as the same as maybe AEW had the idea as Adam Cole being the devil, but him being hurt changed. I don't know, and we don't know these things. But that is what it seems to be. Callbacks of Sting with the Black Scorpion. You know what I'm saying? So all sort of the same. Do need to note, I did not say it before, that Stone Cold and Rock match was 4.25 stars. And 4.25 stars in 1999 are like dollars in 1999, man. They're worth more today.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big time rating for an excellent match on. Could we call Backlash a better pay-per-view than WrestleMania?
Ooh, it doesn't have.
And here's the tough part: is before you speak to give your insight, there is bad, but I'm looking here, man, and I see there's a 3.25 star match, there's a 2.5 star match, there's 2 3/4 star match, there's a 4.25. What do you think, John?
I think that WrestleMania was a Backlash show, and I think Backlash show is just a Backlash show. WrestleMania 15 had the pageantry that you would like to have in a WrestleMania, but it just didn't have the matches or the match quality to carry you. Backlash has a better ending than WrestleMania, but I wouldn't say it's a better show.
Are we going to continue this journey to SummerSlam? Is that the idea?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, then we have plenty left in the chamber, man. There's a lot deeper to go, and we'll save all those deeper things for different times.
So that is our Backlash 1999 review. We thank you for listening. Listen, we have a lot of new subscribers. We want to thank everybody who is a new subscriber. You guys are what is helping make the channel grow, and you are the ones that are driving what we're doing here on the show because of the response that we got from the WrestleMania 15 and the WrestleMania 20 show. It's why we're living here in 99 and 2004. So I know that I said a couple weeks ago that we were going to do Saturday night's main event. I lied. So we are officially doing Saturday night's main event 1 next week on the show. But then after that, we've got 3 straight weeks. So May is 1999 heavy. We are going to start off May, the second week of May. The May 9th show is going to be Raw from May 10th, 1999. And that's going to be a double show for 1999. So we're going to cover that Raw, but we're going to cover all the things that we cannot cover in the WrestleMania 15 show, as well as this Backlash show, because there's so much news and nuggets that Teddy finds that he can't reveal on the show because we don't have enough time. So he's going to dump them all there. Then we're going to piggyback off that. We're going to do the No Mercy 1999. That is a UK event. So we're going to do that one. That's the No Mercy show before No Mercy became an official pay-per-view, which came later that year. And then we're going to cap off that run of 99 shows with Over the Edge 99. And that's where Owen's accident happened. And then for the Podski 100th episode, we're doing the Invasion, and that will be your Memorial Day week show. So we thank you all for listening. Got to give a huge thank you to Teddy Mongoose for all the reading, because he dives in here on what Dave is writing. And with that, we will see you next time on the Podski.